So this is going to be a video that I was kind of got into it from watching a Ken Ham versus Bill Nye debate on evolution versus creationism. I think it's pretty interesting to see two sides of a belief kind of bring out all their facts, and often both sides they tend to complement each other quite a bit. If you look in watching, you can kind of pull things that just make sense to you from both sides out of it, and kind of build your own confidence in your own understanding of things, and be pretty confident that you have facts from all different sides. And that's why I really like watching atheist versus biblical believers. I think those are kind of like two ends of the spectrum, and I even like hearing kind of a third dimension of in regards to beliefs, and that's other religions. So being a Christian, I'm obviously, well, let me explain a little bit about that. To me, a Christian is somebody who has met God in through, let me put it this way, through calling out to Jesus, who they believe to be alive, to hear them in the first place. So I think that's generally a consensus that anyone. So when I refer to being a Christian, I'm not necessarily referring to upholding to Catholic teaching on the authority of the Pope, or the Baptist teachings in some circles that you have to be baptized to be saved, or the Pentecostal teaching where if you don't speak in tongues, you're not really born again, you're not really in the kingdom. That's most of those things. Like I have definitely have thoughts on, but um, those tend to be log splitters and not bounds, binding whole groups of people together. So, as for right now, that's as far as I'll say. That when I say I'm a Christian, I'm saying I'm someone who has heard about the heard that Christ is alive, and also responded by personally praying to Him. So, and then my testimony is what's everything that's happened after that, but how He responded or didn't respond, or whatever. So, uh, and that's not so much what I'm sharing in these videos. I'm opening the floor to be more of a marketplace of discussion, where people with all different beliefs can kind of sit at the table, and like kind of like hobbyists that all come around and show off their motorcycles. Well, everyone come around and kind of pull out their understanding and their belief and show what you got, and not so much to bash other people for what they got, but or if maybe you don't think they have something as nice as you, but to really just kind of start a little community of open discussion. Obviously, I'm going to have some firm beliefs based on what I've experienced, and I bet you will too. So maybe I should turn off this follow my face feature, because no one wants to be thrown around tracking my ugly mug. So I'm just kidding, but yeah. All right. Well, today the key issue is from this debate between Ken Ham and Bill Nye that I found. And I'll post a link for it when I post this video. But I noticed that at 28 minutes 58 seconds into the video, Bill Nye posted these three numbers, and this is what got me started on this whole thing. He posted three numbers. The fact that there are currently 16 to 150 million species. B, the fact that's A. B, the fact that, or two, the fact that the Bible claims there are 4,000 years between the time of Noah's Ark and basically our present day. Obviously, it only kind of tracks to Christ time-wise and scripturally till the time of Jesus, but it does. That gives obviously with that plus 2,000 and however many gives us a rough estimate of about 4,000 years to the time of Noah. So that's pretty clear biblically. And then Ken Ham's number that he brings to the table is that there were roughly 7,000 kinds. Now, when he uses the word kinds, he is not talking about our modern scientific categorization of animals. He's talking about I guess it would be closest to kingdom, or maybe familia, I believe is what it's called. And I'm not you know, I remember that from high school, and that's when we learned it, and I haven't cared enough to go back and memorize the different families. But basically, he's using the term as the Bible used it, and that it's a general family of animal. For example, and you'll see this in the debate, a dog has, there may be 1,000 species of dogs, but they're all of one kind, so to speak. So if that makes sense, there may be 1,000 types of horses, but they're all one kind. There may be 1,000 species of six-legged beetle-like insects, but they're all one kind. So even birds. So generally, I define a kind as, can they breed? If they can only breed within, let me put it this way, the other types of animals that they can breed with are within their kind. If they cannot crossbreed, then they are of a different kind. That's how I'm defining kind. I believe that's how the Bible defines kind, and Ken Ham defines it. And I'm not using modern, obviously I'm using ancient terms there. So there's that. But he mentioned, so I'm taking these numbers, 7,000 kinds of animals over 4,000 years, resulting in our current 15 to 150 million species. And I don't, have no reason to doubt that. Just a quick Google search, I think everyone kind of agrees that our modern categorization of species is broad. So what we can agree on is if there's 7,000 kinds of animals in the beginning, if there were, then each of those 7,000 would, let's call it a species. So that each one of those kinds turned into a certain number of species. And you can get an average for that by taking your total, and by taking your total species given by Bill Nye, which is 140, 150 million or 15 million, those are two ends of a range, which I calculated both for, but you can take that number, divide it by your 7,000 claimed kinds, and get an average number of species that exist today for each of the original 7,000 kinds. So what we're testing, what I wanted to see here is, this is kind of my train of thought, I'll walk you down, is my thought was, Bill Nye said there's no way you can get 150 million. You can't even get 15 million species in a 4,000 year period. And I wanted to look, and he gave this mathematical equation that was a simple division. It was simple algebra. It wasn't. It was. He took the total amount, divided it over evenly across all of time, and said that means there'd be 11 new species a day. That's ridiculous. Well, there's so many problems I saw with that equation that I decided to use my own understanding of natural spread of population, and that's a little more advanced than what he said. I'm sure you can even get more detail, but I think I'm heading in the right direction on using what in I think it was Algebra 2 or Calc 1 was the PERT equation, which is the exponential growth equation. Now this is P equals the final population equals the original population times the constant E raised to the power of rate of growth times the time that population grows. So using the PERT equation, I mean, PERT is applicable in almost every area of natural growth. I mean, when you're talking about viruses spreading, use PERT equation. When you're talking about exponential decay, you can use PERT equation. When you're talking about growth of interest in a savings account, you can use PERT when you're talking about. And it also, quite very often, in fact, one of the probably the most applicable, most fitting places to use exponential growth with natural exponential growth is in the natural growth of plants, animals, human population. It's natural, right? So I think that's a better model of equation to fit the realistic activity of population growth. And what Bill, I'm kind of shocked because Bill Nye has a lot of facts, but he missed like the most fundamental mathematical way of determining. It's almost like he didn't even care to go into the math to see if it's realistic or not. And being an engineer, and I'll give a little bit of my background. I'm an electrical and computer engineer with a business management minor, so I've had a little bit of accounting, and I've had a little bit of I've used this equation before. Not it was before college, but so but my degree is in engineering, so I have enough science and math background, about 4 semesters of college calculus, so differential equations, all that stuff. So it's kind of shocking. He's honestly the first scientist I've ever met, a widely accepted scientist that didn't really even think. I mean, even in high school, we would use that equation for anything that involved exponential growth. He was basically saying that there a certain number of species come out every day, but we know that species grow along with the population. The population doesn't grow linearly; it grows exponentially. So you can, and depending on by picking the PERT model, we're assuming that there is a constant rate of growth. That doesn't mean it's linear growth of population. It means the rate is the rate is linear, so to speak. And this is something you'd understand if you had calculus, or pick that up. But anyway, and as I Googled so what I did was I determined I'm gonna go into this and do an analysis of these numbers and take all the modern theories, all the theories that we're discussing now in modern day about origins of animals and see animals and humans and see which of these numerically agree. Let's see if I can get any results that are realistic, that agree with all the data, that and that's it had nothing to do with me so much wanting to prove a biblical belief that I held or didn't hold, but really I wanted to test his claim that it was impossible for that to happen. And I was thinking, well, exponential growth, 4,000 years is a long time. Exponential growth, let me at least see the rates of species population growth and see if it's even in the ballpark. Maybe these theories all have the same numbers roughly, and they're all roughly in the same ballpark. That doesn't help us at all. That doesn't. Maybe some of these numbers, but maybe one theory has unrealistic growth, and that we have enough information in each one of these theories that you can plug in the values. So that was my general idea. Sorry for the long explanation there. I'll provide links to my write-up, but I ended up doing a write-up with my charts of findings and using the PERT equation for 5 of the most common origins theories, using basic population at the beginning of that, the amount of time they're claiming it happened over, and the population, either animal or human, of that exists now, and the species of animals that exist now. So I'll provide a link, and kind of the next 2 videos will be kind of walking through how I came up with the results I did, and the end will probably be something along the lines of opening the floor to hearing what you guys think about what I think is an unbiased and very interesting numerical and mathematical analysis of some of the claims made on both sides of the creation evolution debate. So, thanks.